Man, what a time to be alive. All things considered, I feel like I'm almost doing more social stuff now than I was before. And there's just so much kind of cool stuff available now. We've got a couple of huge baby metal concerts that are now being offered to people. I've seen all sorts of offers of online learning courses going down significantly. I've been having more social interactions with people as far as like an online Facebook Live, coffee date with people, caught up with all sorts of friends that I haven't talked to in a while. I've been doing more streaming, as you've probably been seeing, of all sorts of games for not only my own entertainment, but all sorts of other people's entertainment as well. I'm even part of a theater group, kind of an online theater group, which is actually really cool. It's called Social Distancing Virtual Readers Theater, which is actually cool. It's Go to Facebook, find the group. You can totally sign up to either be a part of a production or to just be part of the audience. And it's cool because it's this like super low commitment but fun way to do kind of a theater on like Sundays currently. And it's neat because everybody hops up on Zoom and you get your part and you have your script right there in front of you and you just kind of read the lines as it's happening. You dress in whatever costume that you happen to have with you. You have whatever background you happen to have, behind you, and it's cool. It's a unique way to get some people together to do a little bit of low-key theater. And so yeah, you can either watch. I was part of the Midsummer Night's Dream that came out, and once these things are done and recorded, they're going to be available for people to watch as well. And so yeah, I've been doing that. It's kind of cool and nice to be able to connect and do all these things. It's neat, and there's one thing that I've noticed from a lot of people. They've been asking about things that they can watch, things that they can stream, other than Rich Does a Thing, clearly, because, you can catch up on all the episodes that you haven't seen here, but at the same time, there's probably still plenty of time that you would like to fill with things to watch from your favorite streaming service. So I thought about it, and you know what? I'm going to help you out. I will give you my personally curated list of things that I think you should watch. Let's get started. Well, welcome back to this episode of What to Watch, provided by Rich Does a Thing. So I've put together a curated list of different things to watch and the different platforms that you can watch them on. And this is some really cool stuff that I highly, highly, highly recommend. So we're going to start at the top with Netflix. So if you have a Netflix account that you can watch, awesome. If not, you need to find someone to pirate off of. Netflix isn't the end of the world, but I think just about everybody's pirated off of somebody else, except for us. We're actually we have our parents are actually pirating off of us, but that's fine. Sometimes it's good if you have maybe a group of friends where like one person's paying for Netflix, someone's paying for Hulu or like Disney Plus or Amazon or something like that, and then you can all kind of get on each other's accounts, and it makes things way less expensive. So anyway, starting with Netflix, if I had to pick a thing, man, that you could really start with, it's going to have to be Star Trek. And there is a lot of Star Trek on Netflix. And it's great because, hey, Netflix means there's no commercials, which is also doubly awesome. Out of all the Star Treks, the one that I was raised on that is so important to me, Star Trek: The Next Generation. So yeah, if you haven't really dug into Star Trek yet, I highly recommend starting with Next Generation, and then going out from there. There are 7 seasons of Star Trek: The Next Generation, which is a lot to watch, but you got time to watch it, so why not? Give it a shot. There's 7 seasons of that. They said there's lots of other Star Trek on Netflix as well. There is Oh man, if I start with that one, Jesse will probably shout at me from across the house and lunge across the couch and then like dive and hit me, which would be really funny and really entertaining, but the back of my head would probably hit the bookshelf, and you don't actually want to see me hurt. Voyager, yeah. So Voyager is there. That there's 7 seasons of Star Trek Voyager. That was a really good one as well. Deep Space Nine. That's another perennial favorite. 7 seasons of Deep Space Nine. So there's lots of that. There's 3 seasons of the original series, which I never really got into, but it does exist. And Star Trek Enterprise, which, you know what? There's 4 seasons of Star Trek Enterprise, and I didn't dislike it. I know a lot of Star Trek people do, but I don't dislike it. The theme threw me for probably the first season or two. I really didn't like the theme, and then it just, I think it was almost overnight. It just kind of clicked and it grew on me. So I enjoy it, and I oftentimes will troll Jessie with it because she still doesn't like it. So yeah, Star Trek Enterprise. That's the Scott Bakula, which again I don't think he was as bad in that as people say. Give it a shot; it's good stuff. So yeah, there are a total of 28 seasons of Star Trek on Netflix. That will keep you busy. Absolutely. Now, also keep in mind, especially through the Next Generation, I always think of Star Trek as kind of a utopian society where they've thrown off the capitalist ideas and everyone's taking care of everybody, and yeah, people are just kind of working off of merit and just trying for the betterment of the world, which is nice. It is a comforting thought. So yeah, check out Star Trek. Lots of good stuff there on Netflix. Let's see here. Other good stuff on Netflix. Bill Nye Saves the World. That one's a good one. Whether you were a huge Bill Nye fan from as a kid or not, I never got as exposed to Bill Nye as a kid as I probably should have. I don't know why I didn't get the exposure. My primary science dude that I watched growing up was actually Beekman from Beekman's World, which was also a lot of fun with Paul Zaloom. For the record, as a kid, I had no idea that Beekman was played by an actor named Paul Zaloom, which is not a big deal except for one of Beekman's one of the things that he would say, he would just shout as a eureka moment was Zaloom, and like, oh my god, he was shouting out his own last name, which is kind of cool. So there's that. Other good stuff on Netflix, highly recommended, a series of unfortunate events. Really, really well done. I mean, it is, I guess I would call it, a squeaky clean, and yeah, I guess it's probably squeaky clean, but it's good. And yes, it absolutely is a series of unfortunate events. It can be unfortunate, depressing, whatever you want to call it, but really well done. And Neil Patrick Harris plays just a central role to the whole thing. He plays it brilliantly. I was showing Jessie some of it, and she would not believe me that was Neil Patrick Harris because the makeup is so good, the acting is so good. Neil Patrick Harris, by the way, fantastic magician. But yeah, check out A Series of Unfortunate Events. It's a very good story that'll kind of make you continue to want to watch more and more, even though they tell you in every single episode that you should stop watching. You don't want to see any of this. The Good Place. That's another good Netflix one. I don't want to spoil too much of the main plot of everything, but essentially there is a heaven of sorts. A heaven that's only reserved for people who are really, really good. And there's someone who, there's a mix-up, and there's someone whose soul has just gotten into heaven, and they realize that they are not a good enough person to have gotten into that heaven, so and mayhem ensues. There's about 3 seasons of that, and things get really complicated and interesting. So The Good Place is a good show. 100 Humans. That's one of the most recent short series that I saw. It's great. It scratches my science itch. So they appear to have gotten 100 people from all across the country, all walks of life, every bit of age bracket, and anything you can possibly think of. And they get these 100 humans together, and they have things that they are trying to figure out, questions they are trying to answer about humanity, about kind of the human condition. And so they run these 100 humans through a series of experiments to try to figure stuff out. And each of the episodes has a theme. And I think it's really interesting, not only to see how people react to the experiments and the data that you get from it, and it's just really cool and interesting. So 100 humans, go check that out. Sherlock. It's been a while since I've seen Sherlock, but I mean, it's just a really solid, short series, but really solid. Each episode was fairly long, but really good stuff. Benedict Cumberbatch, Sherlock, a fantastic Sherlock. I mean, just, you should watch it. It was very good and enjoyable. You know what? Pee-wee's Big Holiday. That was a fun movie. You know, I enjoyed the Pee-wee movies growing up. Pee-wee's Playhouse was a thing that I very much enjoyed growing up. And so Pee-wee's Big Holiday is his newest movie. Pee-wee is definitely older. I mean, it's one of those nostalgic throwbacks where you watch it, and because it's live action, the person that you are looking for has certainly aged, but I mean, that's okay. I didn't dislike the movie. I felt it was appropriate for a Pee Wee Herman movie, and yeah, it was good. It was fun, so what the hell, give it a shot. Before we finish out Netflix, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Tiger King, because it is a very interesting, strange, weird show, and it's a train wreck. You know you're going to watch a train wreck, and then you see the train wreck, and you're like, wow, yeah, that's all stuff that's happening, and every episode that you watch just kind of gets crazier and crazier. So there's that. Plus, not only that, there's the social relevance. So many people have seen Tiger King that just to get the jokes, to get the references that everybody else is throwing out there, it's kind of required watching at this point. So give that a shot if you'd like. BoJack Horseman is another solid, I say kind of classic Netflix, because so many people that I know have seen BoJack Horseman, and it is, it is one of those animated shows that they use the animated style in a way that I don't think people expect at first, because it has its moments of funny, but it's serious, and it can get dark, and it can get into some tough stuff. There's some bad decisions that are made, almost kind of like Breaking Bad level of bad decisions for so much stuff, and you get to explore the characters and everything. I found BoJack was easier to watch for me than something like Breaking Bad. For Breaking Bad, I think because it was live action, it became really difficult for me to watch, because viscerally I was attaching all those characters and everything that was going on to actual people, whereas with BoJack, I think it's a little easier to remove yourself, but it still can be tough, and for something that's animated, it's cool, it's gritty. So, BoJack Horseman. Last but certainly not least for Netflix, I would say Disenchantment is a nice cartoon. It's a Matt Groening cartoon. Matt Groening, from The Simpsons and from Futurama. So it's that kind of animation style and that show flow style as well. I was happy to hear that my favorite voice actor, Billy West, was also in Disenchantment. Billy West was practically like half the cast of Futurama. If you don't know anything about Billy West, you definitely need to go check that dude out, because he's really amazing. I've actually had a chance to meet him at MegaCon a couple of years ago, which was really exciting. I have his autograph, a picture with him, and everything like that. So Disenchantment is, think of it kind of like a fairy tale land cartoon. Now, it's still, I guess I wouldn't call it an adult cartoon like South Park or Family Guy, but I feel like it's aware enough so that I feel like adults would enjoy it. So check out Disenchantment. That was a fun one as well. And that wraps up Netflix. Moving on to some of the other ones, we've got all right. So there's Disney Plus. There's a lot of stuff on Disney Plus. Honestly, I haven't had a chance to explore that much of it. So I know there are some great things. There are things like The Mandalorian, which I still haven't had a chance to see yet. I have not seen minute one of The Mandalorian. I think Jesse and I will probably end up seeing that together at some point. Right now, we've been binging a lot of a show on Hulu that I will get to. Also, there's the Marvel Cinematic Universe that's on Disney Plus. I have been using Disney Plus to go through a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's I mentioned during the last show how there was still a few that I need to catch up on, but there's just a lot of good stuff to watch. I mean, sit down, throw on a Guardians of the Galaxy movie or something like that, and those are some good stuff to watch. Also, there's CBS All Access, which is another streaming service. I know not as many people have that, and I'm sure there's more good things on there that I haven't had a chance to explore yet, but the main reason why we have access to CBS All Access is for Star Trek Discovery. That was, I think, just a fantastically well-written show. It's different from the other Star Treks in that it's not episodic. You really are following a storyline as things go through in the season, but I think it was really well done. I think the effects are amazing. I think the production values are extremely high, and I think the writing was really, really well done on Star Trek Discovery. The other big one being Picard, where that whole season, the first and so far only season of Picard has come out. So it's Jean-Luc Picard from the Next Generation. If you haven't seen The Next Generation, I would say hold off, go back to Netflix, watch The Next Generation. I would say there are some key episodes to watch for Picard, and maybe Jesse might have a list of all of them, but there are so many of them, you might as well just go back and watch it if you haven't seen it. But Star Trek Picard, I very much enjoyed that show as well. I won't spoil anything. Towards the end, there were some interesting writing choices that maybe I felt a little unsure about, but all in all, I mean, I would much rather take it than leave it. Yeah, I mean, Picard was a great show as well. So those are a couple of things on CBS All Access. On Amazon, if you have Amazon Prime, you have access to a few other shows as well there. There are three different things on Amazon Prime that I think might be worth watching. There's actually the James Bond movies are on Amazon Prime, so that's another thing where it's some classic movies, and if you haven't watched them in a while, that's a decent excuse to throw some of those on and see some James Bond, because why not? Also, Good Omens is a show that I've heard amazingly good stuff from. It's another show that I haven't had a chance to watch yet. That's supposed to be a really good show. It has David Tennant is one of the main characters there, which makes me very much interested to see it as well. Apparently that is a Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman story that's been kind of turned into a show. So Good Omens, I've heard very good things. I don't have any first-hand experience, but that should be really cool. Finally, on Amazon, this is a sleeper. This is not something that I think you're going to have anybody else recommend, but I highly recommend, and I know Jesse and some of our other friends would also recommend, because once I started getting them watching it, they really took to it. So there's this show called The Booth at the End. It ran a number of years ago. There's only 2 seasons of it, unfortunately, because at the end of the second season, they even kind of lead on to there's some unresolved storyline that doesn't actually get tied up with a nice bow. And so The Booth at the End is really unique because throughout the entire series, there's only ever one setting, one place, one room. It's like Rich Does a Thing. Well, I suppose Rich Does a Thing has actually explored more places than The Booth at the End, because we leave this studio here. We've actually gone out places to explore. The Booth at the End does not. You are in this diner, and the diner has, a bunch of booths, and then there's the one at the very end, and there's a gentleman that is sitting there, and people come to him for things. All you see is the conversations that he has with people, which seems really like it would be a plain thing. People come and they talk to him because essentially what happens is they hear that he can make things happen. And so they ask him for something. They ask him for something really specific. It can be from, hey, I want a bouquet of flowers, or it can be, I want my husband who is, on life support and about to die, I want him to not die. And no matter what they ask him, he picks up this large book, he opens it up, he flips through it, and then he tells them there's something that they have to do. And it's not a matter of you have to do, if you do this thing, then I will make this other thing happen. It's if you do this thing, this other thing just happens. And it happens quite miraculously. And it's very odd because it's like he doesn't have a real hand in how it happens. But it's really interesting because there are some really simple things that he asks people to do, and they get their simple results. And there are some really deep or heavy stuff, or sometimes terrible things, that he tells them they have to do. And these people that you can tell are very much innocent, he has them come back and talk with him about the progress on these terrible things that they may be having to do. And so you don't actually see anything happen. It's all just a conversation. It's episodes upon episodes. But at the same time, even though you don't see the action, and even though you're not going and seeing anywhere else, I never felt like I was missing out on anything. You don't feel like you need to be seeing these things. You don't feel bored because just that conversation that's happening with them is really interesting. There's some really interesting characters. You will be surprised, I think, how much you enjoy the booth at the end. So if you have access to Amazon Prime, go check out the booth at the end. That's going to be the one that, again, I'm pressing a little harder on this because you're not going to hear this from other people, but check it out. Last but certainly not least, the streaming service going to be Hulu. Hulu Plus, or whatever version of Hulu. That one, I think I actually have more recommendations than any of all the other streaming services possibly combined. There's some really good stuff on Hulu. Firstly, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. If you haven't seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine, that's a good show. It's entertaining. It's this live action. Andy Samberg is the major role in that show, but there's a lot of other great people. I don't want to name off too many names because you might not recognize them, but they're great. It's well written. It's funny. It's interesting. It's a great show. You should see Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You get some great laughs out of it and some interesting story. There's a lot of Adult Swim stuff on Hulu, which makes me happy. Not only some of the newer Adult Swim stuff, but also some of the older Adult Swim stuff. There's so much Adult Swim that I really love, really enjoy, has a very special place in my heart. One of them that I don't think was as popular as it should have been is The Venture Brothers. The Venture Brothers, I mean, I still quote it. I still enjoy it. I've done some Venture voices from time to time. And it's good. I will say, going back and re-watching it, the pilot in like the first season, it's kind of a slow to start. I don't know how necessary that information is to building on the rest of the plot. So, I mean, maybe feel free to skip around, but The Venture Brothers is a great cartoon. Another Adult Swim, modern Adult Swim, Rick and Morty. That one's a smart, kind of dark, pretty funny, kind of crude, but interesting cartoon. It's another one of those that can get a little rough and dark at times. So, I mean, if you don't like dark stuff, then you might not like it as much, but I know a lot of people that really like Rick and Morty. Bob's Burgers, that's another great cartoon. A lot of cartoons that I'm hitting on here, but really good stuff. Bob's Burgers is very funny. The writing is very good. It's very episodic. Bob and Linda and the three kids, and they get into hijinks, and the humor's good. I think there's a few good quick quips and little funny bits, and it's great. So if you haven't seen Bob's Burgers, go check out Bob's Burgers. Speaking of H. John Benjamin, who's the voice of Bob for Bob's Burgers, that leads me to Archer, another really great cartoon. It's another one of those modern cartoons that that's on a level where I don't like to watch that as background. Generally speaking, I really do enjoy watching Archer. I think the humor is fantastic. The plot is really good. It's very much enjoyable. I like to sit and have my full attention on Archer because that's a great cartoon. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, check it out. I've actually been Krieger once or twice for MegaCon. I believe I was actually Krieger when I met Billy West, and also when I met Brent Spiner as Dr. Krieger. So, yeah, another great cartoon. South Park. Man, if you want to talk about classic adult cartoons, South Park. I didn't look up how many seasons of South Park there are, but there are a ridiculous number of episodes and of seasons of South Park. So, you probably have seen it by now. If you haven't caught up lately, now's a good chance. Go ahead and catch yourself up on some South Park. Another great show for people who like the sci-fi and the Star Trek type of stuff is Orville. Check out the Orville. It is very much Star Trek themed. It presses heavy on the Star Trek button, but it's a different universe. Seth MacFarlane is the gentleman that kind of created and stars in the Orville. So, I mean, Seth MacFarlane of fame of Family Guy and American Dad. Seth MacFarlane, who's also a big science guy, and actually, I believe he produced fully the latest Cosmos series that Neil deGrasse Tyson did. But, so yeah, Seth MacFarlane, there is certainly some of his stupid humor in there. They might have leaned a little bit more into that in the first season, but at the same time, I don't think it was overwhelming. It's not a stupid comedy. It's very much a sci-fi, Star Trek-like show. They touch upon some really important social issues, just like Star Trek does. And at the same time, I think to a certain extent, Star Trek might take itself a little too seriously, where there's a lot of humanizing elements that you don't really see, but there's a lot of those little things happen in Orville. Whether it's a social interaction thing or, humans are imperfect. We forget things, we overlook things. Not a whole lot was forgotten or overlooked in Star Trek. I feel like there were very few unintelligent mistakes that were made where, a lot of that can happen in the Orville, which I very much think makes it a little bit more real, and it's great. It's a fantastic show. I heard some flack from some Star Trek fans about it, so when I first started watching it, I very much enjoyed it, but I didn't show Jessie, because she's a huge Star Trek fan. I figured she was going to dislike it and maybe give me flack for watching it, so I didn't. And there just happened to be an episode up at one point, and Jessie knows her Star Trek like it's practically memorized. She has seen so much of it so often. So when she came through, and she could absolutely tell the Star Trek vibe from everything, but at the same time it was not something she was familiar with. She was offended because she thought maybe I was hiding new Star Trek from her. And she sat down and she watched the rest of the episode and some of the other episodes, and she loves it just as much as I do. So check out the Orville. It's a great show. Going back to Matt Groening, Futurama. Yes, Futurama is also on Hulu. It is, it's a fantastic show. It's, been around for a good while. There's some really great plot points. There are a few episodes of Futurama that will make you cry. It will tear your heart out, and it will make you cry, even though it's animated, even though it's, fairly silly. But some good stuff. And again, Billy West voices like half the cast. Billy West, the same dude, if you're familiar with it. So the same dude voices not only Philip J. Fry, who was closest to Billy West's actual voice. He also voices the Professor. He voices Zoidberg. He voices Zap Brannigan. He does, so many of the character voices in that show are Billy West, and it's really impressive, really good stuff. The show that Jesse and I have been watching quite a bit lately, it's been kind of our dinner meal, our dinner show, is The Masked Singer. We were watching that, and this is a terrible sentence, and I apologize for saying it because it's weird. It kind of hurts me to say it. I'd like to thank Sarah Palin for getting me to watch this show. Because when I first heard of The Masked Singer, I figured it was just more regular, American television bubblegum of let's get some famous people that sing to sing some stuff in masks, and then we'll all clap and go, oh my god, you have such a beautiful voice. I'm so glad you're famous. And whatever. I don't care. I really don't care. American Idol, don't care. America's Got Talent, I don't care as much, mostly because of all the singer stuff. Whatever. I mean, there's some really cool variety stuff on America's Got Talent, but I haven't watched it as much. But then I read an online article where they said, hey, Sarah Palin just got unmasked for The Masked Singer. What? It couldn't occur to me that someone like that could be masked and singing on this show. In fact, really, having her on there really just kind of pushed the point of really anybody. Anybody who's anybody. Anybody regardless of intelligence or lack thereof. Anybody regardless of ability or lack thereof. Regardless of sanity or lack thereof. Could be on The Masked Singer, and that made it much more interesting for me. So I actually went on and started watching. Hulu only has from season 2 forward, so started watching it season 2. Jesse hopped on, and we've been watching that. We finished season 2, and we just recently finished the eliminations for season 3 for Group A and Group B. Now, it'll probably be some time before the show actually goes out to air, so who knows, we may have caught up by then, but in any case, it's cool because you really do have all sorts of people who are singers, are not singers, that show up on there. So it's cool. You should check it out. There's another couple of shows that I very much enjoyed watching back in the day, especially for sci-fi lovers, and that is Stargate. Stargate SG-1 and then Stargate Atlantis. I enjoyed them both. They are both up on Hulu, and there's just a ton of episodes to watch. You can go through there and watch those and more. Great TV, and not enough people are familiar with Stargate because there are times in which I will go to work and I might look at the employees and say "Shofa Cree," and they do nothing. They look at me like, what is wrong with Rich? Again, still, So check out Stargate. Those are some good shows. A triple hit of more old school Adult Swim stuff. There's some great stuff from C-Lab 2021. C-Lab 2021 is a short show. There are only about 15-minute long episodes. Actually, probably less than that because it was like 15 minutes and like a block of commercials, including a block of commercials, should I say. But C-Lab 2021 is absolutely ridiculous. It's, old footage from an old cartoon that they've kind of repurposed with some new voices, including Eric Estrada as one of the voices. And it's stupid and ridiculous and hilarious, and it makes me giggle so hard. So, check out C-Lab 2021. Another good one, classic, is Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law. Another great short. I think it's another one of those 15-minute kind of Adult Swim shows. And Stephen Colbert has a pretty decent voice in there. Actually, he voices 2 different characters. And there's a lot of good stuff. They throw back to a lot of older cartoons. And it's funny. It's great. I very much enjoy some Harvey Birdman. So check that out. And lastly, for the Adult Swim stuff, there's one called Moral Oral, which was a kind of a claymation show. If I remember correctly, I think they only had 3 seasons of that, and it was this like super religious, like goody family um, and as just saccharine sweet and just squeaky clean as all of it was, they would either throw in some other references, or the family would have to deal with some topics that maybe were less squeaky clean. And it was a really kind of interesting, stylized look at all that. And if I remember correctly, after the second season, or after they got greenlit for making the third season of Moral Laurel, they then basically said that it was getting canceled. But they were already greenlit to make that final season, so the writing got heavier, and they really it started to get a lot more impactful and made you feel some feels. It's been a while since I've seen it. That's one of the things that I feel like I need to go back and watch Moral Laurel. But yes, the protagonist of that show is a young boy named Orel. Orel is his name, and it's a thing. It's a thing. So yeah, check it out. Watch a few episodes. I don't know if you can just skip right to the third season and have everything else stick or not, but yeah, maybe give that a shot. The last two things I've got on the Hulu are things that are probably things you might not have recommended to you, but I still think were really interesting. There's one of them, the Amazing Jonathan documentary. The Amazing Jonathan, the famous comedy magician of sorts. I mean, he's definitely a comedy magician. You've seen Comedy Central specials for him and all sorts of stuff like that. He had a show in Vegas for the longest time. He's kind of a prop magician, comedian guy. And he's funny and sometimes, a little gritty or dirty or whatever, but not like Andrew Dice Clay, but he's, he'll make some like drug jokes or something like that. He had this thing where, unfortunately, due to some heavy drug use that he's had throughout his life, he had this, I think it's a heart condition or something, where basically he was told he was going to die, and he was going to die really soon. They gave him less than a year to live, and that was that. So he went on tour for like a final tour of doing shows and stuff like that. And I found out about that the day that he was in Orlando performing over at the Improv, over at the near where the Improv at Point Orlando. It's kind of that whole plaza. So I was at work. One of my magic buddies said, "Hey, the Amazing Jonathan is dying. He's going to be performing tonight at the Improv." I just happened to have that night off, so I went online, I grabbed a couple tickets, I grabbed Jesse, and we went and we saw the Amazing Jonathan in what was, his last week of performances before he was going to go off and die, which, crazy. And I went and I bought one of his books, and I bought a video, and got him to autograph those and everything, and told him how much I appreciated him and his humor and everything. And then, yeah, I mean, he was very weak even throughout the whole show. It was sad. And here we are years later, and he's still alive. And he was known as a jokester, prankster. Sometimes he would lie about some stuff just because he would think it's funny. And so the Amazing Jonathan documentary kind of covers that whole thing about him going through and getting the diagnosis, and his life up to that point, his life after, and the fact that he's survived past what the doctors have said that he would. And it's difficult for the documentary maker, not only who's dealing with him and trying to get the shots and the information that he wants. He's not necessarily waiting for him to die, but at the same time, his death would factor a lot into the movie, and then it gets really complicated. There ends up being like 2, 3, 4 different documentary crews, not with the consent of this other original documentary crew. It gets complicated. And so this covers through all that. It tells a really unique story. So the Amazing Jonathan documentary on Hulu, I would check that out. And last but not least, there's something there on Hulu called Too Funny to Fail, The Dana Carvey Show. Dana Carvey, fantastic comedian, kind of legendary comedian. He was Garth from, Wayne and Garth from Wayne's World, had so much great stuff on Saturday Night Live. I wasn't really aware that he was given his own comedy show. So at one point, I guess he was given his own comedy show, and it was given every amount of money, writers, all sorts of really interesting stuff. And this goes over. It's kind of a documentary of what happened with that whole thing. Not so much documentary in the moment, so much as a look back at everything. And it was kind of mismanaged with everything. It was a really interesting look at, because it flopped. It flopped hard. Really, they started losing sponsors left and right. They eventually ended up canceling that whole show with like 1 or 2 episodes left. They just stopped, and so it's a really interesting look at that and how that whole thing happened. And you get to see I believe Stephen Colbert is actually even part of that before Colbert even got famous, before he was on The Daily Show or anything like that. And it's really interesting to actually, there's a lot of comedians that before they got famous that apparently were either on or writing for The Dana Carvey Show. And really another interesting thing, one documentary, one little movie thing to watch. So that's another one that I would recommend. And that completes our list, our big giant list of my recommendations of what to watch. Now, I realize we have filled your eyes and your brain. Hopefully you were taking notes. You know what? Maybe I should make this. I will make this available on richdoesathing.com. Check out the episode, the page for this episode, and I'm going to take all those recommendations and I'm going to put them right there so that you can reference, you can check it out. Heck, copy, paste, throw in a Word document and then highlight as you go watching or something like that. And so I hope this helps with everybody, because there's some really fun, really interesting stuff. And chat with me about it. Throw some comments either on the show or to me personally. And tell me how you liked any of this stuff. Thank you once again for spending that time with me. Once again, it's obligatory. I have to say it. You got to hit that subscribe button at the bottom, because it means the world to me. Thank you to everybody who has. Check me out on Rich Does a Thing on Facebook, richdoesathing.com. All the other social media outlets. You got the Instagram, the Twitter, the any of that stuff. Please check it out, and please tune in next time. Until any questions, comments, or anything like that, hit me up at rich@richdoesathing.com. It's great. We might open up the mailbag again and be able to answer some more of your questions. But until next time, keep watching. Stay safe. Bye.